An invitation and an unusual idea. William Lancaster sat in his high-rise penthouse, staring at the wedding invitation in his hands. The elegant gold lettering gleamed under the dim light, spelling out the names of two people he never expected to see together: Olivia Harrington and Charles Montrose, his ex-fiancée, the woman who once promised him forever, and the man she had chosen instead. He exhaled sharply, tossing the envelope onto the sleek glass table. Was this some kind of joke? A cruel way to flaunt her new happiness in his face? The sting of betrayal still lingered, but William had long since buried it beneath layers of success, business deals, and an unwavering image of perfection. Yet this simple piece of paper had managed to unearth emotions he thought he had long since discarded. Across from him, Damon Carter, his closest friend and business partner, leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "That's brutal," Damon mused, picking up the invitation and scanning it. "You gonna go?" William scoffed. "And show up alone, like some heartbroken ex who can't move on? Not a chance." "Then don't go alone." Damon shrugged, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Show her you've moved on. Show up with someone who'll make her regret ever leaving you." The idea wasn't a bad one, but William knew Olivia. She wasn't the kind of woman who'd be impressed by just any date. If he was going to do this, he had to do it right. He needed to make a statement, something unexpected, something that would make Olivia question everything. Later that evening, as he stepped out of his office building into the bustling city streets, the idea was still lingering in his mind. He needed someone unique, someone who would make people stop and stare, someone who wouldn't just blend into the crowd. And then he saw her. Sitting against the side of a cafe, just past a flickering neon sign, was a young woman. Her clothes were worn, her jeans torn at the knees, and her oversized jacket looked like it had been through one too many winters. Her long brown hair was messy, strands falling over her face. But her eyes, they were sharp, piercing green, filled with something he hadn't expected: defiance. She wasn't pleading for money. She wasn't begging for attention. She sat there, arms crossed, watching the world pass by with an expression that said she had seen everything and was impressed by nothing. William slowed his pace. Something about her intrigued him. She wasn't like the others he had seen on the streets. Her posture was strong, her gaze unwavering. On impulse, he walked over. She noticed him immediately, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What? You come to do your good deed for the day?" William smirked. "Do you need money?" She leaned back against the wall, one brow raising. "And if I say yes, do you toss me a few bills and walk away, feeling good about yourself?" His smirk deepened. "No, I have a different offer." Her lips quirked up in amusement. "Let me guess, a social experiment. You want to see how the poor live for a day?" "No," he said evenly, tucking his hands into his coat pockets. "I want you to come with me to an event. One night. I'll pay you well, enough to change your life." She let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. "Wow, do you always talk like that? Or are you just trying to sound like some kind of storybook billionaire?" Her sarcasm threw him off more than it should have. Most people would have jumped at the offer, but she wasn't most people. "You just need to dress up, smile, and act like you belong there," William continued, watching her carefully. She tilted her head, studying him. "So, you want me to be your what? A decoration? A prop to make someone jealous?" William narrowed his eyes. "If you don't want the offer, I can find someone else." This time, she laughed, really laughed. A bold, genuine sound that cut through the city noise. "Yeah, you got a line of women just waiting for you to pick them up off the street." He clenched his jaw. This woman was challenging him at every turn, and for some reason, he didn't hate it. She stood up, brushing dust off her jeans. When she stepped closer, he noticed how her eyes glimmered in the dim streetlights. There was something dangerous about her, something magnetic. "I'll accept," she said at last, as if she were doing him a favor. but not for the money. He frowned. Then why? Her lips curled into a smirk. Because I'm curious. I want to see how far a man like you is willing to go. William stood still for a moment, staring at her. Who the hell was this woman? Transformation and unveiling the past. William wasn't sure what to expect when he led the mysterious woman to his car. She walked with a quiet confidence, completely unfazed by the fact that a stranger had just offered her a life-changing sum of money to be his date to an extravagant wedding. She settled into the leather seat of his sleek black luxury sedan, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Most people, especially those who had lived on the streets, would have hesitated, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in surroundings. But not her. As William pulled onto the main road, he finally turned to look at her. "You haven't even asked me where we're going." She smirked, watching the city lights blur past the window. "Someplace expensive, I imagine. You're not curious." "Should I be?" she asked, tilting her head. "Let's see. You found me sitting outside a cafe and offered me money to be your date. That's already strange enough. But I doubt you're planning anything sinister. Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked. So, what's the point in asking questions?" William let out a soft chuckle. She had a way of reading people, of breaking them down with just a few sharp words. He wasn't used to that. Most people in his world tiptoed around him, afraid to say the wrong thing. But this woman, she didn't care who he was. And for some reason, that made her even more intriguing. "Since you're not going to ask," he said, keeping his eyes on the road, "we're heading to a high-end salon first. You need to look the part." She turned to him, a teasing glint in her eyes. "Ah, of course. Can't have me showing up in rags, right?" He smirked. "You said it, not me." She laughed under her breath, but didn't argue. After a short drive, they pulled up in front of one of the most exclusive beauty salons in the city, a place where high society women spent thousands for perfection. The moment they walked in, the stylists rushed forward, their trained eyes already assessing every detail of his companion. "I want a full transformation," William instructed. "Hair, makeup, wardrobe, the best of everything." The lead stylist nodded, stepping forward with a practiced smile. "Of course, Mr. Lancaster." The woman beside him raised an eyebrow. "So I get no say in this." "You agreed to the deal," William reminded her. "That includes looking the part." She sighed but allowed herself to be led away. As she disappeared into the styling area, William took a seat in the waiting lounge, checking his messages, but his thoughts kept drifting back to her. Who was she, really? She was too sharp, too composed for someone who had supposedly lived on the streets. She had no hesitation, no fear. Something about her didn't add up. William glanced at the clock. 2 hours. That's how long it took before the lead stylist finally returned. "She's ready," the woman said with a knowing smile. "You should see for yourself." William stood, adjusting the cuff of his tailored suit as he walked toward the private styling area. When he stepped inside, he stopped in his tracks. The woman standing before him was unrecognizable. Gone were the tattered clothes, the dust, the exhaustion. Her long brown hair was now styled into elegant, soft waves, framing her delicate yet striking features. Her piercing green eyes, once shadowed by hardship, were now accentuated by subtle, sophisticated makeup. The fitted black dress she wore hugged her figure flawlessly, and the delicate silver jewelry only added to her refined appearance. But what stunned him the most wasn't the transformation itself. It was her expression. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look overwhelmed. She simply gazed at herself in the mirror as if she had been here before. William narrowed his eyes. There it was again. That feeling that something didn't add up. "You don't seem surprised," he finally said. She turned to him, her lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "Because I'm not." He folded his arms. "Why is that?" She grabbed the small purse the stylist had given her and walked toward him, stopping just inches away. "Let's just say I've been in this world before." His jaw tensed. That wasn't an answer. And what does that mean? He pressed. She simply smirked. It means I'm ready for this wedding. Shall we go? William studied her for a long moment, but she didn't break eye contact. She was a mystery wrapped in silk and secrets. For now, he decided to let it go. Let's go, he said, leading her out. As they walked toward the waiting car, William couldn't shake the feeling that he had just invited something unpredictable into his life. And strangely enough, he didn't regret it. The grand entrance and an unraveling mystery. The car glided smoothly down the illuminated city streets, weaving through the night toward the grand estate, where the wedding reception was taking place. The soft hum of the vehicle filled the silence between William and the woman sitting beside him. Isabella. That was the name she had given when the salon stylists asked, though something about the way she said it made him wonder if it was even real. She sat there, poised and composed, watching the city pass by without a hint of awe or intimidation. The dress she wore, the elegance she now embodied, it all fit too well, too naturally. Most people in her situation would be overwhelmed. They'd fidget, steal glances at the luxury around them, ask 100 questions, but not her. You're very quiet, William finally said, watching her from the corner of his eye. She smirked slightly, still gazing out the window, just enjoying the silence. He raised an eyebrow. Most people in your situation would be dazzled by all this. She let out a soft laugh, turning her head slightly toward him. Maybe I'm not like most people. There it was again. That calm certainty in her voice, like she knew something he didn't. William clenched his jaw. He didn't like being left in the dark, especially not by someone he had chosen as his companion for this night. You still haven't told me why you're so comfortable in this world, he pressed. For someone who was sitting on a sidewalk earlier today, you sure don't seem out of place in a luxury car on the way to an elite wedding. Isabella tilted her head, studying him for a moment. Then she smiled. A slow, almost dangerous smile. Would you believe me if I said I used to be part of this world? William's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Explain, he said, his voice controlled but firm. Isabella sighed, turning her gaze back toward the city lights. I wasn't always where you found me. I used to live in places like this, go to events like the one we're about to attend. I knew the rules, the expectations. I played the part. Her voice had shifted slightly, softer, but laced with something else, something unspoken. William frowned. What happened? She let out a quiet breath. Life. He could tell she wasn't going to give him more than that. At least not yet. But now he knew for certain. Isabella wasn't just some ordinary woman. She had a past, a story, and it wasn't a simple one. William exhaled sharply. Well, I guess that makes things easier. Just follow my lead and don't draw unnecessary attention. She raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in her emerald eyes. You brought me here to make your ex jealous, and you don't want me to draw attention. William smirked. Touché. The car finally pulled up to the entrance of the grand wedding venue. The estate was breathtaking. A massive structure adorned with glowing chandeliers, marble columns, and an iron-gated entrance that kept the outside world at bay. The driveway was lined with expensive sports cars and black-tinted limousines, each carrying guests who were used to living in excess. As the valet opened the door for them, William stepped out first, straightening his suit. He turned back to Isabella and extended his hand. She took it without hesitation, stepping out gracefully. And just like that, all eyes turned to them. The murmurs started almost immediately. Who is she? She's stunning, but I don't recognize her. Is that William Lancaster's date? The high society elite were hunters, always looking for new gossip, new drama to unfold in their privileged circles. And tonight, William had given them exactly what they craved, a mystery. As they walked down the grand red carpet leading into the reception hall, William leaned in slightly and whispered, "You're already causing a stir." Isabella smirked. "Good. Inside, the reception hall was a masterpiece of extravagance. Golden chandeliers illuminated the vast ballroom, casting a warm glow over elegantly dressed guests. Tables adorned with white roses and gold-plated dinnerware stretched across the room, where laughter and polite conversation blended into the melodic sound of a live orchestra. And at the center of it all, on an elevated platform, stood Olivia. She was even more beautiful than William remembered. Her elegant white gown hugged her figure perfectly, her blonde hair styled in soft waves that framed her delicate features. She held onto the arm of her fiancé, Charles Montrose, the man she had chosen over William. As if sensing his presence, Olivia turned her head, and when her eyes landed on Isabella, William saw it. The flicker of surprise. Olivia's lips parted slightly, a reaction so quick it would have gone unnoticed by anyone else. But William saw it, and so did Isabella. The moment only lasted a second before Olivia composed herself, her expression slipping back into its carefully controlled elegance. But that second had been enough. William smirked. This was already working. As they approached the couple, Olivia greeted him with a polite smile. "William, I wasn't sure you'd come." "Of course I came," he replied smoothly. He turned slightly to Isabella, placing a hand lightly on her back. "And I brought company." Olivia's gaze flickered to Isabella again, this time with more calculation. "We haven't been introduced." "You are?" Before William could answer, Isabella extended her hand with flawless confidence. "Isabella, a pleasure to meet you." Her voice was calm, controlled, perfectly measured. Olivia hesitated, only for a fraction of a second, before shaking her hand. "You look familiar." Isabella simply smiled. "Do I?" William could see it now. The tension, the silent questions forming behind Olivia's polite expression. She was unsettled, exactly as he had hoped. Charles cleared his throat, forcing a polite smile. "Shall we toast?" He lifted a champagne glass. Before William could respond, Isabella did something that completely changed the atmosphere. She picked up her own glass, raised it delicately, and said, "I hope you'll be very happy. Marriage is a serious commitment. I was once engaged myself." The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Olivia's posture stiffened, her smile frozen in place. "Really?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. Isabella nodded, taking a slow sip of champagne. "But it didn't work out. My fiancé decided I wasn't the right choice for his family." William's entire body went still. What was she doing? And then he saw it, the way Olivia's fingers curled ever so slightly, her knuckles going pale. She understood. William glanced at Isabella, realization dawning on him. This wasn't just about making Olivia jealous anymore. Isabella was playing a game of her own. The grand reveal and an unforgettable exit. William watched as Olivia's carefully controlled mask cracked, just for a moment. It was subtle, the kind of shift only someone who knew her well could notice. The tension in her shoulders, the slight parting of her lips, the way her fingers twitched around the delicate stem of her champagne glass. She knew. She knew exactly what Isabella meant, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. For the first time that night, William wasn't the one in control. Isabella was. He turned slightly, studying her. She stood there with flawless poise, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her champagne glass. She wasn't gloating, wasn't smug, just waiting. Waiting for Olivia to react, to acknowledge what she clearly already suspected. Olivia finally spoke, forcing an airy laugh. "That's quite a coincidence," she said. "And what happened to him? Your fiancé?" Isabella's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "He married someone else." Silence. Even the surrounding conversations seemed to quiet for just a second, as if the weight of those words had somehow shifted the entire energy of the room. William felt his pulse quicken. There was something in Isabella's voice, something intentional, calculated. This wasn't just about making Olivia jealous anymore. This was something deeper, Olivia's fingers tightened around her glass, and she let out a small, breathy laugh. What a shame. But I suppose everything works out the way it's meant to. Isabella simply tilted her head, as if considering that statement. Yes, she said lightly. I suppose it does. William didn't miss the way Olivia's eyes darkened. There was a question there, one she wasn't willing to ask in front of a room full of people. Charles, sensing the tension, cleared his throat. Shall we dance? William expected Isabella to decline, but instead, she turned to him and extended her hand. Shall we? She asked, a challenge dancing in her emerald eyes. William hesitated for only a second before taking her hand, leading her to the dance floor. The orchestra's melody wrapped around them as they moved, Isabella effortlessly falling into step with him. You planned this, William murmured, his grip tightening around her waist. She raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in her gaze. Did I? You knew exactly what you were doing back there, he said. You weren't just playing along. You were leading. She smiled, spinning gracefully under his arm before settling back against him. And you don't like that? William exhaled sharply, his frustration clashing with something else, something dangerous. He wasn't used to being outmaneuvered. But damn it, he liked it. You're not just a random woman I picked up off the street, he said, lowering his voice. So tell me, who are you really? For the first time that evening, Isabella hesitated. Not because she was caught off guard, but because she was deciding how much to tell him. Then, with a soft sigh, she whispered, I was engaged once. To a man who thought I was beneath him. A man whose family made it very clear that I wasn't the right kind of woman. So I left. William's breath caught in his throat. No, it couldn't be. He looked at her, really looked at her. And suddenly, he saw the ghost of a woman he had once known. Not Isabella. Isabel Harrington, Olivia's sister. His pulse thundered in his ears. You. She smiled, but this time, there was no amusement in her eyes, only a quiet, knowing sadness. It took you long enough. William felt his entire world tilt. He had met Isabel once, years ago, before Olivia had left him for Charles. She had been young, fiery, outspoken. But she had disappeared after a bitter falling out with her family, a family that had made it clear she was an embarrassment to their name. And now here she was, standing in front of him, a woman reborn, unbroken and unapologetic. You wanted Olivia to recognize you, William said, realization settling in. That's why you came. I didn't want her to recognize me, Isabel corrected softly. I wanted her to remember. The dance ended, but neither of them moved. You could have told me, William said, searching her eyes. She smiled again, a real smile this time. Would you have believed me? He exhaled sharply. Probably not. As they stepped away from the dance floor, Olivia was still watching them, watching Isabella. She had figured it out too. And for the first time that night, Olivia wasn't the picture of perfect composure. She looked shaken, uncertain, exactly the way she had once made her sister feel. Isabella turned to William, her expression unreadable. I think I've had enough of this party. He nodded. Let's go. Without another word, he led her through the grand hall, past the murmuring guests, past Olivia's silent stare. And as they stepped out into the night, Isabella Harrington didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had already won. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.